Have you ever wondered how you can start mining Bitcoin? And hey, listen, I'm talking about 100% renewable Bitcoin mining. In today's episode, Nico shares topics that are trending in the Bitcoin mining industry. Concepts of 100% renewable energy hosting to the technical details of network hash rate. This is an episode that you're not going to want to miss. We're covering all that in today's video, so let's start with some fun questions. The first question is, if you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
Oh wow! Yeah, I think it's either flying or being invisible. I think being invisible and sneaking into meetings would be interesting, but flying and having the freedom to fly would also be nice. It's the first time I get this question.
Yeah, I feel like there are a lot of questions that can be asked, but this one isn't the normal one that you get asked when you're on a mining or a tech podcast. So it's a fun one to start with.
Yeah.
I got one other fun one, and then we'll dive into a lot of your articles. For everyone listening, this is going to be an incredible conversation, not only for the person who's really deep down the mining rabbit hole, the Bitcoin mining rabbit hole, but also for the people who are more on the surface, maybe don't know a lot of the nuances that people in the mining industry talk about. So this will be a great episode for you as well. Second question is, if you could time travel into the future, which person would you bring with you? You can bring anyone on the entire planet.
Yeah, I would like to bring my wife and kids. I mean, my family is very important for me, so I will bring them.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
I was wondering, I just came up with this question, and it was random because it was based off of this comedy sketch.
Yeah.
There's this comedian named Nate Bargatze. Not sure if you've heard of him.
No, I haven't.
But he was talking about, the premise of the joke was what would happen if he time traveled to the past, and he was saying that he doesn't even think he could prove that he was from the future, because they would want to know, okay, well, you say you're from the future. How are you from the future? Who's the next president? And he's like, oh, I don't know about that one. He's not the smartest guy. And overall, he thinks that he'd go into the past and he'd be doing worse than he was doing today in the present. So yeah, for the future, that's another one where it's like, who do you bring? Most likely family. That'd probably be the right answer. But who knows? You could choose anyone in the entire world to be by your side when you're going there. You don't want to. It would be good to show up and you're with, Elon Musk or someone who's super intelligent. You get a little bit of additional street cred.
Yeah, sure. But I think my family and my friends are most important. So I would up those. Spend as much time with them as possible. It's important to me.
That's a good answer. So I want to talk initially about this article that you did on Paraguay and the 100% renewable hosting. But to start, to catch everyone up to speed when we talk about hosting, could you pretend that I'm like 10 years old and you're trying to explain what hosting is?
Yeah, I think it's best to describe as renting out a place for your miners. So you don't have space at home, or you cannot deal with the noise, the heat, the maintenance. You're not technical. Then it's interesting to put your miners elsewhere. It's convenient, but it's also for many people a solution because they don't have the financial means to build out their own site operation, or they don't have the technical skills. And often hosting services, they can attain or obtain lower fees, right? Lower electrical fees. So if you're on a residential contract, the fees are much higher. But once you get at a certain threshold and you get access to industrial rates, it's much more attractive to mine, because electricity is the number one cost of your operation.
Yeah, and going off of the concept of energy, we've been seeing this whole conversation of a lot of miners wanting to move towards renewable energy sources. Mm-hmm. And this could be, for one, because of all the heat that miners are getting for not being run on renewable energy, but also from a pricing perspective. So from your point of view, what do you think are the important things that people should keep in mind if they're mining today, or if they're thinking about mining, as it relates to renewable energy?
Yeah, I think so. We in Paraguay work a lot with hydro energy. and hydro is quite stable. I think if you use natural gas, then you're more prone to the fluctuations in the market, right? So I think the stability and the predictability of your electrical cost is an important one. And I hope to see more and more mining in the solar and wind industry, that we can show the world that miners can have an interesting role to play in the build out of renewables by soaking up the excess power when there's not a lot of demand but high production, and also by balancing the grid, right? So hopefully we move more to that. But I do think renewables are the way to go. Whether we go 100% renewable, that's going to be taking a while. I think it's like the general energy transition, that it's a transition, and we also need like a different batch of energy providers or sources, I would say, to be able to do this transition.
It's interesting to see how this industry has evolved, not only just from an energy perspective, but from a hardware perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that you've also written articles about the hardware markets, and I'm really, really excited for that. I've just got a couple more questions on Paraguay. So, how do you end up there? Like, there are so many places around the world. What about Paraguay? You're like, this is the spot.
So I'm Dutch. I grew up in the Netherlands, but my wife is Argentine. So after 16 years of living in the Netherlands, she wanted to move back, and I moved with her. When I came here, I saw a lot of opportunity for mining because there's a lot of energy being produced, and there's a lot of energy that doesn't reach the market. So there's a lot of stranded energy and wasted energy. We started setting up mines or mining operations here in Argentina, but Argentina isn't the most favorable country for foreign investors, so it's mostly Argentine clients that we have. And so we started looking into the region, and Paraguay is a logical place because there's an abundance of energy. They produce 99.9% of their energy using hydropower. And there's a big access because they have the second biggest dam of the world, and next to that another couple of big dams. So they produce a lot. It's not a big country. I believe there's 6 million people living there, so they don't consume it all. They sell a part to Brazil and to Argentina, but they're not making a lot of money on it. And Paraguay is a landlocked country, so it doesn't have access to the sea. So for other industries, it's not the most interesting country to set up camp, right? Because you don't have access to the sea, but also the domestic market is not that big. So I think there's little competition from other industries for this energy in Paraguay, and that's why it's also interesting.
Seems like you've given it a lot of thought, which is good. I've heard quite a bit of things about miners looking at Paraguay, and I've only heard good things said about it. So it seems like you made a good choice there.
Yeah, so it's that's also one of my goals, right? To build bridges to show investors from the US and Europe what the possibilities are in South America and specifically in Paraguay, because it sounds sometimes a bit scary. It's a country that not a lot of people know about. Like if you think of South America, a lot of people mention Brazil and Argentina, but Paraguay is just a country that's not very well known. So there's a lot of opportunities. Even though it might sound scary, it isn't that scary. If you're in the area, around the dam, you feel the energy of the energy being produced. So it's really a nice experience. The people are hard workers as well. Like Paraguayans, they work hard. So it's a good country to set up shop, I believe.
Earlier, you mentioned the difficulties of running your own mining operation. And so just to reiterate those, it's a lot easier to go, and this is the importance of hosting a lot of times, is that you might want to start mining Bitcoin, but it's very difficult to actually get started. There's a knowledge barrier to actually know. Not everyone just knows how to run a Bitcoin mine. But
Well,
then
there's so many
technical
aspects, right? I mean, you cannot know
Yeah, I mean,
everything.
even some miners, right? Like even
No,
miners, you'll look at their operations, and there might be 70% uptime, and that's a big difference because if you're not running,
yeah,
then you're not generating Bitcoin.
definitely.
And then the heat, the noise, just the amount of time that it takes. There's a lot of things that go into this. And you write about this concept of all-inclusive hosting and some of the benefits of all-inclusive hosting as compared to running your own operation. And so maybe a good place to hand it off to you would be just explaining very simply what you mean when you write about all-inclusive hosting, and then what you see all-inclusive hosting like compared to other forms of hosting.
Yeah, so we use the term all-inclusive hosting because yeah, we try to take away all the challenges and worries of somebody that wants to start mining. So we have an operational team that's at the site around the clock. We monitor your operation. If a miner is down or it's underperforming, we pick it up. We also support in importing the ASICs because in Paraguay you need to know customs and your way around. So that's another part of the all-inclusive, I would say, taking care of the logistical part. If clients want to buy miners, new miners, we also provide advice. We do projections, see what kind of machine fits their situation best, depending on the capital available and their goals also. We can provide discounts for pool accounts and help set up those accounts. Also, if somebody wants to use a certain monitoring software, that's possible. So I think the all-inclusive is like a broad spectrum of services that we provide. Also, for example, insurance for ASICs. So we insure your machines against theft and damage due to caused by fire or flooding. And yeah, I think the most important part is the customer support. So when somebody is interested to mine with us, yeah, we have a lot of conversations with them to find out what their knowledge about mining is, what their ambitions are, what they find important in the aspect of hosting, and we try to facilitate or take away the worries and educate the people that are mining with us.
That's important. Yeah, the customer support, that's one of the big things that I think is very important in today's day and age where
Yeah.
you have such an opaque industry, and there have been so many things, even outside of Bitcoin. A lot of times it gets looped in. People just generally have lost trust in the industry. And so it's good to, I think it's really important for companies to maintain high levels of customer support.
Yeah, and also work on transparency, right? Because yeah, once a miner is ordered, like we keep the customer up to date. Okay, now it's at deposit in Hong Kong. It's arriving in customs at Paraguay. Oh, it takes a bit longer to clear the batch. So constantly informing about the status and helping also with the onboarding, I think is an important aspect.
So one of the other things that people really need to pay attention to when they're thinking about mining is this concept of the network difficulty.
Yeah.
So I think, so you wrote an article, I believe it's called Difficulty Increase Breaks Hash Price Uptrend. And I want to dive into some questions that your article does a very good job addressing, and that I think are very important for people out there who want to begin to understand more about hash price, hash rate difficulty. So to start, could you explain in very simple terms what you mean when you're talking about hash price and hash rate difficulty?
Yeah, so hash price is the amount of dollars that you can earn per terahash or per petahash, depends a bit on which website you check. So it's your revenue, let's say, based on the computing power you have. and this is mostly influenced by the price of Bitcoin. So if price goes up, hash price goes up, and if price goes down, hash price goes down. But it's also influenced by the difficulty adjustment. So if there's an increase in difficulty adjustment, that has a negative impact on the hash price. And obviously also the block rewards has impact on the hash price, right? So next year, when the halving is coming up, it will also have at least in the beginning, a direct impact on hash price by cutting it in 50 or in two. Yeah.
Yeah. And for everyone listening, the halving's a very big event for all miners because it is essentially the amount of Bitcoin that you're receiving getting cut in half. So the next one, I believe, is happening in May 2024.
Yeah, I think it's now projected to an end of April, something like that. But yeah, time is ticking. So that's also why I believe you see quite some miners coming online. So the hash rate keeps on growing. It's also being caused by orders that were placed in the past coming in, and infrastructure that's being built out or completed, let's say, because last year a big bottleneck for miners was finding available rack space. So there was quite some building out being done, and yeah, that's being completed, and orders from last year and even from 2021 are now being deployed. So that's why you see the hash rate go up, which has an impact on difficulty. Difficulty goes up, and that has a negative or puts a negative pressure on the hash price.
So this conversation that we're about to dig even deeper into is one that it's hard for me to wrap my head around a lot of the times. And I'm someone who is pretty deep in the Bitcoin mining industry. And the reason why I feel like it's difficult is because you have all these different levers, and versus, many other markets, a lot of people on the surface are just looking at the price of Bitcoin. Then the miners inevitably have to look a couple layers deeper. They're looking at cost of the ASICs. They're looking at hash price, hash rate difficulty. They're looking at the cycles. They're looking at market sentiment, and just so many things, even down to the mining coming online. And that's, I guess, the best question for you after just kind of putting all that out there would be, how do you make sense of all of this when you're trying to make decisions around hosting, around buying miners, around forecasting the price and the amount of revenue? Because there are so many different variables to account for. But if you're just trying to put it simply, what do you think is important to pay attention to, and what is more quote unquote noise that is given too much weight?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, it's important to accept that you're going to make mistakes, right? There are many bought miners at a price that's not sustainable, or there's people who went into power purchasing agreements that were too high. Like there's going to be a moment in time when you mine that you make a mistake, let's say. So learning from those mistakes and not not quitting because of the mistakes is, I think, important, because the mining industry is an industry in which you constantly need to learn and adapt. So in theory, it's very easy to talk about how to time the markets, but in practice, it's also challenging, right? Because you also deal with available cash, for example. Maybe in the bull market, it's easier to get access to funds, but then you buy miners at a high price. Yeah. So what sorry, I forgot the question a bit. I guess this needs to be
kind of like an open book question, just
Okay.
how you view, and I think you answered it to a large part, of just, how you view the overall way to make decisions around mining with all of these variables that are at hand.
Yeah.
And it seems like you mentioned another very important one, which is just the availability of capital. Like that's another variable that I didn't mention initially, which is during these bull markets, that's when all the capital is available, but that's also when everything's so much more expensive. I mean, miners are on an 80% discount right now compared to what they were during the bull market. And that makes a huge difference in terms of your overall return on investment. If you're getting miners at a huge discount versus financing miners at 10,000 plus for an S19.
I think this focus on cost is an important one, because you don't have influence on the Bitcoin price, nor the amount of hash rate coming online and the difficulty or the impact it has on difficulty. So focusing on the cost is an important one, and also try to plan accordingly, right? Like if it's a bull market, you make a lot of margins on your machines, but there's going to be a time that your machines are not efficient enough to compete for your rewards. So you need to plan ahead, and you can do that by scaling out, for example. And we talked about hosting. I also like to use hosting as a tool, let's say, to create a cash flow that can either cover some operational costs for your self-mining, or that allows you to save money so that you can invest in the expansion of your infrastructure or your miner fleet. So I think integrating hosting into your self-mining business is a very positive way of or a good way that allows you to plan your business in a solid way, in a sustainable way.
Sounds good. So I got one final question on this particular article on these topics as it relates to hash price and Bitcoin difficulty. And it really comes down to, at the end of the day, profitability, right? If you're a miner, you have a certain level of cost to operate and to acquire that hardware. And then you're going to be generating a certain amount of Bitcoin. And going back to the halving, that Bitcoin that you're generating is going to change based on the amount being distributed by the Bitcoin network. Right now, every 10 minutes, it's 6.25. But then also the amount of other miners on the network that you're competing with for that block reward. So with all that said, my question for you is, how does the hash price and mining difficulty impact the profitability of Bitcoin mining? And what factors should miners consider when deciding whether to invest in mining equipment?
Yeah, so during the peak of the bull market in 2021, we saw a hash price of 40 cents. And it went all the way down to 5 cents last year at the bottom of the bear. And right now we're around 8 cents. So I think it's important to understand that we're still looking at the margins at the bottom of the bear, right? However, between the end of 2021 and now, a lot of hash rate came online. So the difficulty increased also. So even though there's going to be a new bull market and hash price will go up again, my expectation is that it won't go back to the 40 cents mark, because you have a higher competition now. That's more machines online competing for the same Bitcoin. And with regards to the halving, I think it's important to understand that price usually responds with a delay to the halving. So what we've seen in previous cycles is that after like 6 to 8 months after the halving is when Bitcoin starts increasing again. And usually it's the same period that hash price, that it took hash price to come to the same level as it was previous to the halving. So planning accordingly for a period of, let's say, 6 months to a year of low margins is very important. And there's 2 ways to go about it. One is you build up sufficient reserves to survive this period. Well, I guess there's more options. You can also do low power mode, like increase the efficiency of your miners by putting less power into it. But also, when you look to purchase ASICs now, I would already assume like current hash rates cut in half. Like, is it still profitable if you cut current hash rate in half? If not, then either you need to opt for another machine, or you need to find another place where energy is cheaper. So planning already now for the halving, and or even before now, like in the last couple of months, is an important one, because last thing you want to do is step in now thinking you hit the bottom of the ASIC market and then become unprofitable once the halving hits.
That couple minute segment right there has so much information, so much value in it, especially for someone who's a miner and knows how the cycles work, but also is thinking about decision making around it. Every single miner who is listening right now should go back and rewatch what you just said at least 2 times, because there's so much value there. That's incredible. That we'll put a pin in it for that section there with the network, hash rate, hash price, all that. And now I think that's a perfect segue into treasury management. You also mentioned there that, as a miner, treasury management is one of the most important aspects of your job. Those decisions are going to make a huge difference whether your company survives or whether you die in these cycles. So to start, when you're talking about treasury management, could you just lay out or define what you mean when you say treasury management as in the context of Bitcoin mining?
Yeah, so I think an important part there is the managing your cash flow, right, and dealing with the costs that you have, and this I think it's important to have a strategy for it, or to have a plan how to manage your cash flow and how to pay for your costs, because if not, then you just you respond without a plan, and you probably make the wrong decisions. I do think like the treasury management strategy is something dynamic, like you need to revise it and adapt according to market conditions, because they can change very quickly. But looking at the management of your cash flow, I think there's a couple of strategies there, or main strategies. One is the HODL strategy. I think all miners are in the game because, or most of them, because we're all long Bitcoin. We anticipate the appreciation of Bitcoin, and most miners, they would have the ambition to hold on to everything they produce, right? But yeah, you have your monthly bills coming in that need to be paid. So either you need to have a big pool of cash that funds that those costs, like electricity and personnel and other overhead costs, or what I like as a good strategy is to diversify your services, right? So integrate our activities into your business, like selling ASICs or providing repair services. Some miners can sell their heat in colder areas. You can do consultancy and help out other miners. So think of ways how to create a cash flow that allows you to pay for the operational costs and gives you more strength to hold on to the Bitcoin you mine in order to sell it in better times, let's say. Another way to go about your treasury management, or how to go about managing your cash flow, is a hybrid way. So there's miners that sell their Bitcoin, that part of the Bitcoin that covers the operational costs, or there's miners that mine a certain amount of Bitcoin that they want to hold on to, and once they reach that threshold, they start selling. So there's different ways to go about it as well. And also there, like there's different approaches, right? You can sell daily, you can sell monthly, you can sell weekly, or you can sell at a lower rate. Let's say you sell less Bitcoin during bear markets and start increasing the sales of your mined Bitcoin when the market is going up. And then the third way to go about it is mining for fiat. I know to a lot of Bitcoiners that might sound dirty, but selling your all of your Bitcoin that you mine frequently does provide you a more stable cash flow, let's say, that helps you or that facilitates the planning of your business also. So these are the three main ways: hodling 100%, the hybrid approach, and mining for fiat. And I think whatever you do, you should do because it's optimal for your situation, and not you shouldn't just hodl onto your Bitcoin because you see all the memes on Twitter, right?
It's one of those things when you watch it happening and playing out in real time. Some people are going to look like geniuses, and then others are going to look like absolute idiots. And as Bitcoiners, I think that we've got a lot of conviction for where the asset's going in the long run. And then also, if you see the people who are mining early on, if they had just held on to their Bitcoin, especially people from the early days, it's just crazy the amount of money that they would have if they actually just held on to that Bitcoin. That goes on to the layers, a couple layers deeper, because you're looking at the true value proposition of each of those things, of US dollars versus of Bitcoin, and the relationship between those prices. But bringing it back to the mining side, do you think that you could give an example of a company from this past cycle who pursued one of these strategies? Like, tell a story, because I know that we've seen a lot of these big miners facing a lot of trouble, declaring bankruptcy, and that's for a number of reasons. Some of them might have taken on bad loans, might have overextended themselves, but I would like to see, if you know any off the top of your head, a story of a company that pursued one of these strategies and what the outcome was within the time frame of when they went under. Just to give an example to everyone of this is what can happen if you pursue this strategy at the wrong time. And the one last piece that I'll say before passing it off to you is that many companies that decided to take the go long Bitcoin strategy or not sell when Bitcoin was very high and then have it crash, if they didn't have cash in their reserves, they got into trouble versus those same miners that looked like geniuses when the price of Bitcoin was just going up and their Bitcoin was appreciating.
Yeah.
So that, I'll pause it, and I'm excited to hear what example you give.
Yeah, so I'm not I follow the public miners, but I from the top of my head, I don't know the exact strategy of each treasury strategy of each miner. I do know, I don't know if it was CleanSpark or, well, one of them was the odd one out that was selling Bitcoin throughout the bull market, and they did quite well. I think if you sell in a bull market, that also allows you to create some funds for new miners and for build out when the opportunity is there. Last year we saw a lot of miners, big miners, that mined high and sold low, right? They were forced to sell. So I think preventing that you are forced to sell your Bitcoin is an important one. I think that's why planning is important, and revising and adapting your strategy, your treasury strategy constantly is important, because you want to be in control as much as possible, right? Otherwise, planning your business is difficult.
Yeah, it's one of those things with the miners in particular who made those decisions. And you're correct. At CleanSpark, they were selling. They were the odd one out. And miners are the ones with the highest vested interest in the network. But there is really something to be said that if you can have a reserve of cash, so you're never forced to sell, I think that's where miners get in trouble, is when they're forced to sell their Bitcoin. If you can have cash on hand, it helps.
Yeah, I think what also plays a role with the public miners is that at a certain point, the shareholders, they were evaluating the miners based on the amount of Bitcoin they had on the balance sheet, right? So I think that also played a role in that everybody tried to hold on to their mined Bitcoin to increase their stacks, because that was reflected in the stock price. If you're not a public miner, then perhaps that pressure is a bit less, and it allows you to uh, maybe plan according to how you envision instead of pleasing the shareholders.
That's interesting. That makes sense, but I never really, I guess, vocalized it or realized that they were being valued basically because of the Bitcoin on their balance sheet at that point in time, which makes sense because I was looking at these crazy valuations of these miners, just wondering how people were making sense of it.
Yeah, so there's ways to evaluate it, but I think many were looking at Bitcoin and balance on the balance sheet and future hash rate, right? What is coming online in the coming periods. But we also see that they had to adjust that. So how how much can we trust those promises? Let's say, um, yeah.
Yeah. So, final piece on the treasury management. I'm wondering if you have any final thoughts for any miners out there to keep in mind that we haven't touched on. At a high level, we've discussed these different strategies: hodl Bitcoin, hybrid approach, the fiat, just looking at it as a cash flow business. Are there
Yeah.
any final pieces of advice or insights that you can give to any miners out there?
Yeah, so next to managing your cash flow, another important aspect is managing your risk, right? And this you can do by, for example, mine at different geographical locations in order to reduce the regulatory risk. But also you can build out various smaller mines or mining operations instead of one big one, so that if there's a problem with the leasing contract or with the power contract, that you don't need to shut down your complete operation. You can also diversify, looking at the miners that you have at your operation, like um, not going for one model and one batch of miners, but have different models at your facility, so you reduce the risk of buying a batch that has a lot of trouble, let's say. Um, uh, Other ways to diversify is also diversify into other services, like I mentioned, to create cash flow. And risk can also be mitigated by focusing on the efficiency of your miners, planning ahead to the halving, um, and also looking at power sources, right? Like uh, trying to find the power source that fits your business model is an important one. Either like I mentioned before, like if you mine with natural gas, then you're more prone to the fluctuations in comparison to hydro. But maybe there's also ways to participate in curtailment programs to get a lower rate, for example, or to mine with intermittent sources to get a lower rate. So lowering the cost of your production by choosing the right energy sources is also an important one.
100%. That's one of the things where it just makes logical sense for for Bitcoin mining to be with renewable energy. Is the two industries just go hand in hand. I think that the way that Bitcoin miners generate revenue, the fact that they can be placed in all these different locations, geographic agnostic, and can be shut off at any time and help support the grid. And just looking at renewable energy sources as intermittent power sources, it just doesn't really compute that people are attacking Bitcoin mining for being environmentally damaging.
Yeah.
I still don't understand how people aren't seeing what is actually happening here. But I think it's just because they're not actually on the ground. They're not the miners. Then I'm hearing about this New York Times hit piece that's coming out, and it's just madness out here.
Yeah, but also for people outside of our industry, it's difficult to grasp and to understand. So I think education is key.
Yeah, it's interesting whenever the topic comes out, because whenever I tell someone that I'm in the Bitcoin mining industry, they haven't been consuming the content that shares that it's environmentally friendly, and they've been consuming the hit pieces.
Yeah.
And so they automatically think that I'm killing the environment when I tell them the industry that I'm in.
Yeah.
And it's something that always comes up. And I'm
Your
curious.
minus
Do
increase
you ever run
emission,
into
right?
that?
Yeah, no, I also have that, and it makes me nervous or angry. Like frustrates me sometimes. But I think the approach is to be patient and to explain to people what it can do, right? So the emphasis is on that instead of the negative. Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of examples out there, so you can just share those.
So I also want to talk with you about the some market dynamics that you're seeing.
Yeah,
Another one of your articles, I'm going to read the name here for everyone. March comes in like a lion and goes out like a lamb. So we are at the end of March. Just for everyone listening to this episode, we're recording on March 22nd. And the first question that I had about this article was, you mentioned how Bitcoin's price dropped significantly in the first part of March, and then we saw a V-shaped recovery.
yeah,
There's a lot of news that's been happening this month, and I'm sure that people who are listening can probably point to a lot of different factors and theories on why we saw this V-shaped recovery. But I want to get your take on it from someone who understands all the dynamics at a high level, but then also understands these dynamics that we've been talking about in this conversation when it comes to the mining industry. So what do you think has led to this V-shaped recovery in March?
yeah. Well, I think like many markets, if there's negative news coming out, there's a negative response to it, right? But then I think the reason why it had a V-shaped recovery is because uh, it went back to the beginning of the creation of Bitcoin, right? Like when there was when we had the financial crisis and there was a lot of bank failures in 2007, 2008. That was actually the reason why Bitcoin was created. So I think that narrative came back. I haven't done the analysis myself, but I heard or read it somewhere that the increase in price was mostly caused by Bitcoiners buying more Bitcoin. So not a lot of new entrants in the market. So I also think like Bitcoiners started believing their own narrative again or something, or getting confidence that Bitcoin solves this, right? That's the meme is.
Yeah, a lot of the conversations that I've been involved with recently have been because of all these bank failures. And I've had this kind of a conversation around the bank failures, the fractional reserve system, quite a bit in the past couple of weeks. But how are you taking all of this in?
Well, yeah, I advise people around me to also open up various accounts, right? Like in the Netherlands, there's like a guarantee that up to 100,000 euro on your account is being covered by the government if the bank falls, and that's actually what I experienced myself in 2008. The government stepped in, and my savings I had as a student, they were put back in my account quite quickly. So that I think it's important for people to understand like there's a risk there, whether you believe the Bitcoin narrative or not, or want to buy Bitcoin to risk to hedge a risk or not. I think it's important to also think of your money that you have sitting in the bank and spread your risk by opening up various accounts, even if it costs you a couple of dollars or euros a month, right? I mean, people are really making decisions like based on the fees, but I think the paying a bit of a fee to be on the safe side is very valuable.
So the dollar has lost a ton of purchasing power. I want to give you a quick question. And
Yeah.
the question that I'm about to ask you, I 100% would have gotten wrong if it was asked to me on a podcast. So just good luck with this question. It's a question to see how much purchasing power the dollar has lost over time. And so we're going to put you back in the year 1927. Let's say that you're going to the movies and you want to buy a movie ticket. At the time, the technology in the world in 1927 is much worse than it is today. It's a lot more difficult to put on movies. Not everyone has a TV. Movies are a special event. How much do you think it costs you to buy that movie ticket in US dollars?
I would say 10 cents or something. Like, I don't know. I've
That's
seen
a really good answer. It's 15 cents. So
15.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I've seen these ridiculous McDonald's menus, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
The dollar loses a lot of value, but I live in Argentina, and here it's even crazy. So people here they save a lot of dollars and they use a lot of stable coins because they're used to saving dollars. So you see a higher adoption of using stable coins than adoption of Bitcoin. So it's inflation. I think is a bit new to the US and Europe. But still, for many in the world, the U.S. dollar is the safe haven, and they don't look at Bitcoin, but they save in dollars.
It's interesting because a lot of my friends outside of work are not plugged in at all when it comes to Bitcoin. I'm like the person within the group that is always
the annoying one, right?
Stuff. I'm the outside person in the group, and it's interesting because I would talk with them about some of these concepts. I'd be like the person to bring it up, which is like probably pretty annoying after a certain amount of time, but I'd bring it up and people would never really notice. They'd always look at it as a problem for someone else somewhere else in the world. But people are really starting to realize just the effects of inflation because prices, even in dollars here, are going up so quickly. And people are looking at their bills and how much they're spending per month, and they're realizing I'm not really changing the way that I'm living, but you're seeing a much higher bill on paper, much more coming out of your account. And so it's interesting to just see this realization coming to people in America, coming to people around like New Jersey, New York City, Washington, D.C., whereas this is a concept that seems to be fairly well understood by people in other countries that are actively trying to get out of their currencies and into dollars.
Yeah. And it's also a difficult time, right? Where should you invest your money? Like it's very difficult to try to keep your purchasing power. Amongst friends and family, I always advise to get off zero, right? To buy a bit of Bitcoin, and that's usually my way of orange pilling. Try to get them to buy a bit of Bitcoin, so they discover what it is. That's how it happened to me. Like I bought my first Bitcoin, and then I went down the rabbit hole. So buying a bit of Bitcoin, even if it's I don't know, $50, is already a good start because it triggers people to understand money and the financial system better.
That's a really good point. When you have a financial tie, a financial interest in something, you're forced to learn about it. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of the times I'll talk with people and tell them, hey, look, you own Bitcoin. You might as well own a miner and start learning about mining because it'll force you to learn a lot about things that as just a pure Bitcoin holder, you might not necessarily know. And it might put you down some interesting philosophical rabbit holes. And at the end of the day, if you've got a financial interest in something, you're going to inherently be more interested and want to learn more about it.
Yeah. Usually if people don't own any Bitcoin, I first say just, if they ask me, should I get into mining? I say, just buy Bitcoin and hold on to it and learn about it and then go into the mining business. I think it's two different investments also, right? Like Bitcoin, you can buy and hold, be very passive. Obviously, you can learn a lot, but the investment itself can be quite passive. While mining, I think, requires it requires more education, but also you need to see it as a business more than as an investment. The ASIC is an asset that's worth something. You need to time the purchase of an ASIC and maybe selling the ASIC in the right way. You have a cash flow coming in, You need to monitor whether your miner is online or not. So I think it's I usually say mining is more of a business, and Bitcoin is it's more of a passive investment vehicle.
Yeah. And going off of the Bitcoin mining side right now, one of the other things in your article is that the hash rate is doing some interesting things right now, reaching some new all-time highs. So could you talk about what you think that this means for the industry as well as for the Bitcoin network?
Yeah, I think also in the bear market we saw some interesting dynamics, because in previous bear markets the capitulation was much higher, right? Like before, if it wasn't profitable anymore, people would switch off their miners. In the last bear market, we saw a lot of big companies and public miners that became that went bankrupt, but they didn't stop their operation, right? They got a Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and they refinanced the operation, and the miners were switched on while they were switching hands. So I think that's an interesting development. And now, yeah, you see a lot of miners going online. I still think it's like a delay also in the future orders coming in, and orders that were sitting, like miners that were sitting in boxes, finally being deployed. I do think it will become more and more like the growth will slow down, because it's difficult also to deploy machines. Like you need new infrastructure, you need access to good prices for your energy. So that will become a challenge at a certain point. If Bitcoin starts going parabolic, there will be a time that miners cannot keep up, and then the hash price will lift off again. But yeah, I do see more growth of the industry, more hash rate coming online, but I think it will slow down eventually.
I want to pick your brain for some predictions. So
yeah.
I'm not sure which one to start. And to preface it, the predictions are always difficult. I have like long-term views on where things are going, but the shorter term predictions are always tough. But when I have someone on the podcast who's has so much expertise on Bitcoin mining, hash rate, hash price, network difficulty, these types of things, I got to ask you for some predictions. So the first one, which is the obvious one that everyone's going to end up asking, is a price prediction around Bitcoin. And I don't want to constrain you by giving you an exact time. I want you to lay out a price prediction for the price of Bitcoin based on whatever timing you feel comfortable giving it in.
Yeah, that's
I'm going to guess it's a lower prediction than Balaji's $1 million.
Yeah, I think it's like what I usually do for when I project for mining. Like I calculate things for clients. Like I always am very conservative. I assume a negative scenario, a neutral scenario in which Bitcoin stays at the same level, and then a positive scenario. But even the positive scenario usually is not even a new all-time high in the next 3 years. But I do believe we'll reach new all-time highs. I do believe we'll cross the 100,000 mark at a certain point. But I do think it's important to always stay conservative, because if it then overshoots, it's only in your benefit. And also, of course, it's good to dream a bit, but temper your dreams, because when Bitcoin starts being full bull again, then you also need to start selling if you want to, for example, buy a house or whatever. Like if you have a big number in your mind, then you might be disappointed at the end if you didn't sell anything in the bull market. I like personally, I have some financial goals, and like I want to achieve those, but I also like to put some Bitcoin on a ledger and stuff it away for my kids when they are ready to leave the house. They're 6 and 8 years old, so looking way into the future. But I think it would be great to give them at least one Bitcoin each, and that they can sell it in the future if they want to, or maybe buy a house with it. I don't know, but yeah, I think more than predicting, it's important to think of your own financial goals. And yeah, but why are you in Bitcoin also, right? Like, no.
Yeah. So can you give a price prediction with a time frame, or
No,
should we move
so
on to
I
the next
think
one?
a new all-time high will be after the halving. Let's say, yeah, I expect a bit of the spark of the bull market, like the parabolic phase, somewhere end of 2024, and then we'll go into new all-time highs. Yeah, I don't know, 2025, 100K, and we cross 100K.
That's a good one.
No,
So
no,
2025.
no financial advice.
Yeah. None of this is financial advice. Don't go and mortgage your house and buy Bitcoin unless
No.
you're trying to pursue the sailor strategy. But okay, so that's good. My next question is on the predictions for hash price. So just for everyone listening, you'd mentioned that during the bull market we had 40 cents. Then it dropped down as low as, did you say 5 cents
Yeah, like
during
around the 5 cent level.
around 5
I think it was
cents?
5.3 or something.
And right now it's about 8 cents.
Yeah.
So do we
Yeah.
have any
So
predictions of where that might be going in the future? And actually, if you could maybe give a prediction of a range of where it'll be leading up to the halving and then after the halving.
yeah, so I think yeah, up to the
This is
halving.
an important one for the miners out there.
Yeah, I feel a bit like, if looking at the price action of Bitcoin today, it reminds me a bit of 2019 when we came out of the bear market and we had like a mini parabolic move to 12K or 13K, and after that it went down again and we went sidewards and had a dip during the COVID period. Like mentally, I prepare a bit for this scenario. I don't know where this current run is going, but I don't expect that we go from here to new all-time highs. So there will be some more suffering to come, let's say. And yeah, I think into the halving, yeah, that's really hard to. I would need to do some calculations also, looking where, like, some projections where the hash rate will go. But I think in the bull market, the top of the bull market, it will be lower than last bull market, which was 40 cents. So if I had to guess, like, this is a guess, like I should calculate this. Maybe this is a good exercise to do and send a tweet about. But I think we'll end up somewhere around 20 cents per terahash. So yeah. Leading into the halving, I find more difficult to predict.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I'd be very curious. I'm not sure if you know this off the top of your head, but do you know what the peak was in the price in the price, not this previous one at 40 cents, but what it was the cycle before?
Yeah, so during the top of the bull market in 2017, it was
That's the one. Yeah, what was that?
At $2.80.
Oh, wow. Okay.
If only we were mining back then.
Yeah. Well, so that is interesting. So
yeah, I think that the big difference between then and now is the amount of hash rates, right? Like between that period and now, the machines have evolved tremendously. So the chip size was reduced and the efficiency was reduced. So you need less energy to produce the same amount of terahash. The hash rate output of the machines has increased. And this development was quite aggressive over the last 5 years, let's say, but it's also becoming less because the chip size, like the XPs, they have a 5 nanometer chip size. I believe the smallest chip in the world currently is 2 nanometers. But the S9 had, or was it the S1? Like they had like 55 nanometers. So the amount of efficiency that was gained over the last period, looking at ASICs, we won't be seeing in the future because there's a limitation to the chip size reduction. Efficiency might increase because of infrastructure, right? Like if you use immersion cooling, for example, or maybe underclocking, low power mode. Those are ways to increase efficiency, but there's it's slowing down the efficiency.
For everyone listening, I know we haven't talked about it in this conversation, and I think it would be interesting for people to understand what you mean when you talk about overclocking, low power mode, and immersion cooling. Those are three separate things, but those are levers that miners can pull. Just so for everyone listening, these are important tactics that miners implement to try and, depending on how they see the landscape, to try and maximize their profitability.
Yeah. So overclocking is essentially putting more power into your machine, so you produce more hash rates, running your machines at a higher power input, let's say. That increases your revenues, but it also increases your electrical use, right? The costs. So you need to, when miners overclock, they usually try to find a sweet spot where they increase their hash rate, so the computing power, but don't overshoot with their power costs. A low power mode is when you put less power into the machines, so it runs slower. Let's say you make less Bitcoin, but in general, the energy consumption falls at a faster rate than the revenue in Bitcoin. So your machine becomes more efficient. You get more terahash per wattage, more Bitcoin out of your machine while having lower costs, let's say. So those are important tactics that miners use. Usually, when your energy is cheap and miner economics like hash price are good, then it's time to overclock. And when times are hard, margins are low, there's many going into lower power modes. And immersion cooling is dropping your machines into fluids, oil that conducts temperature but not electricity. And it enables you to cool your machines significantly, but also to maintain the temperature at a constant temperature, which is important for the lifespan of your machines. Like the hash boards or the chips, they suffer a lot from fluctuations in temperature, and using immersion cooling allows you to maintain a stable temperature, and thereby your machines suffer less, and the lifespan increases.
Yeah, over the past 3 years, I would say roughly the past 3 years is when I started hearing a lot more about immersion cooling systems. And I mean, it just logically makes so much more sense. You're going to be able to maintain the longevity of your equipment. You're going to be able to get more Bitcoin out of them because you can overclock, run them harder, mine more.
It does make more sense, but at current ASIC prices, it makes less sense, let's say, because then when you set up an immersion cooling system, usually the build out or the initial investment is higher than when you manage temperature using airflow. And when machines are high, when the prices of machines are high, then this investment in the immersion cooling system is relatively low, right? And now machines prices are lower, so part of your initial investment it's a bigger portion that's going to the immersion cooling system. So per miner, it makes it more expensive, let's say, to set up immersion cooling now in comparison to a bull market when machines are more expensive.
All miners need to listen to this episode and just hear all the wisdom that you're dropping. I hadn't even thought of that. That is so smart. Yeah. During the bear markets, when equipment is very cheap, it makes a lot more sense to just pick up those machines.
To invest in machines. You can increase your hash rate by having more machines versus overclocking, let's say.
So Jaron introduced us, and I had him on a Twitter space for one of Saz Mining's Twitter spaces every Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. By the way, if you're listening to this, go check out Twitter space. You can participate in these types of discussions. But one of the questions that I asked him was a thought experiment. So let's pretend that, and I'm curious to hear your answer. He gave a really good answer to this question. So let's pretend that Ethereum and Bitcoin are each children, and they're in middle school, and they're out in the yard, and then they get into a fight. Who do you think wins in that fight? The kid who's Ethereum or the kid who's Bitcoin?
Yeah, I would say Bitcoin, of course. But I don't recall his answer, but I've heard it. It was quite an original one. But I think it has to do with the proof of work, right? Like, imagine Bitcoin going to the gym every day. It becomes much stronger than Ethereum sitting on the couch.
That's a really good one too. Yeah. Proof of work. Bitcoin's going there every single day, putting in the work, getting stronger. Then Ethereum's just slacking.
I'm not a hardcore maxi, by the way. Like I am Bitcoin only as much as possible. I of course have sometimes bills to pay in stable coins. I do believe Bitcoin is the one. But if someone likes Ethereum, I'm not a hater. Let's say I let people be. Not promoting any fighting.
Yeah, when I first got involved, I actually went down after hearing about Bitcoin, I went down like the other path very early on and learned a bunch about Ethereum, a lot of these other cryptocurrencies. And I actually own like a decent amount of Ethereum, and I haven't been selling it. And one of the big reasons why I haven't sold it is also just because of the tax implications, because I bought it when it was really low. I think the cheapest ETH that I bought was around $150, I think.
Nice.
Maybe even a little lower than that. And if I sell it, then it's just such a high tax. So I just haven't sold it.
Yeah.
So I guess inherently I am sucked into still always having to support the Ethereum ecosystem.
Yeah.
And I do think that people are working on some cool things, but I do think that Bitcoin, I'm just very ingrained in seeing the potential for Bitcoin. And I haven't been reading up as much on Ethereum. I have some friends who are really deep within that ecosystem that I try and get a lot of my knowledge from, but there's only so many hours in a day and so many things you can follow.
Ethereum is quite popular here in Latin America. Also, when there was mining going on, like you would see Ethereum mining almost everywhere, like at people's houses, but also I passed by a shop, I saw it in the window, or shops that had it in the back of their business. So back when it was still proof of work, it was very popular here, but there's also quite a big developer community here. I also own some Ethereum and other altcoins, but I mostly try to trade them to obtain more Bitcoin in the past. During bull markets, you feel like a king, and during the bear markets, you need to stop trading because you lose your money.
Yeah, I'm sure that I personally have never been like a big trader. I've always been like buy and hold.
Yeah.
But I hear some stories of people who are traders and.
Yeah. So the analysis I do in my newsletter, they actually come from the trader background. Let's say I spend many hours on the charts. and was trading quite actively. It became less and less active. Also, believing more in just buying Bitcoin, trying to time the big cycle, let's say, the multiple year cycle. But that's when I got into Bitcoin, I always wanted to do something with Bitcoin. I never knew what. I wasn't a programmer or developer, so trading was something I explored, and it gave me the basis to do this analysis of price and hash rate, hash price, ASIC prices.
So when did you first start learning about Bitcoin and these other digital assets? When did you first get exposed to it, and when did you really start dedicating your time to getting involved?
Yeah, so in early 2017, a friend of mine said he said you should buy some Bitcoin. The number goes up. I tried to buy it, and then I found it too complex, and I was like, oh, forget about it. And then I saw the number going up, and then again I was like, oh, I need to get on board, I think. So that was my first time I got into Bitcoin, and then I started listening to a lot of podcasts. Um, I discovered there's so much free knowledge out there. That's what I like a lot about the Bitcoin community. There's so many ways to educate yourself, and so many people that share their knowledge. Uh, and then in 2021, I started mining, and no, last year, the beginning of last year, I started uh, leaping into the mining industry, um, and leaving my fiat job, let's say.
So another question, this one's not necessarily directly Bitcoin related, but on the topic of Jaron,
Yeah.
how long have you known him again?
Not that long. Like I feel like I know him for a long time, but it's because I follow him on Twitter, you know.
Okay.
But we've been chatting since a couple of months. So.
Okay. So this is one of my favorite questions. And so I just need to know that at least like you've known him for over a month or something. So the question is, imagine Jaron is a robot. What do you think he'd be programmed to do?
Well, he's been very well programmed to analyze mining stocks. I think how he uh, how he looks at the public companies is yeah, it's a very special skill. Let's say it's something that I found harder to do, and he does very well. So yeah, I think he's very well programmed to analyze public miners.
Some stock analysis
Yeah,
piece of
yeah,
software.
diving into the public miners.
Yeah,
Big
I think
big
that's a
part
good
of his
answer.
programming.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I was speaking with them, I was just blown away. Same thing with you. You guys are both very, very knowledgeable. Any miners out there should probably follow both of you guys on Twitter and turn on notifications. Actually,
uh,
on that point, can you tell everyone about where they can stay in touch with you? Twitter, the
yeah,
newsletter, things like that.
uh, yeah. So I'm on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Smid Nico. So it's first my last name and then my first name. I also have a newsletter which is called the Bitcoin Mining Blog Post. It's a free newsletter that I publish every week. One week I do a market analysis, and I look at indicators like the Bitcoin price, hash rate, hash price, difficulty, ASIC prices. And then the other week I dive into a specific topic. It's a Substack, and there's already about 50 articles on there. So if you check it out, go back also and check out the previous articles. I started the newsletter because I was just studying the industry and saw so many interesting information that I wanted to share. I never ambition to be a content creator or something, so it doesn't come from there. It's just that writing a newsletter triggers me to constantly study the industry and learn, um, and hopefully, like through the newsletter, others learn as well. And it's been a good way to meet people also. So people contact me through the newsletter, and that's also part of my business model. Let's say I've been doing quite some business with people that got in touch with me through the newsletter. And my company is called Digital Mining Solutions. Our site is digitalminingsolutions.tech, so check that out. And we help companies setting up their mining business, whether it's self mining or hosting business. We can advise and take you by the hand. We also do brokerage. So if you're looking to buy a site or set up shop in South America, it's something we can help you with. And then we offer hosting opportunities ourselves.
That's great. And for everyone still listening, a lot of the topics that we discussed today, as you know, were based off of some of your previous newsletters. So I highly recommend. I also am a subscriber to the newsletter. So highly recommend going and checking that out. I got one final fun question for you.
A lot of fun questions.
Yeah. You know, we got to keep the mining, the fun questions within the mining, just sprinkle them in. So this question is, do you know Harry Potter?
Yeah, well, I have to admit, I haven't seen a full movie. Like, I know who Harry Potter is, but I don't know the story that well.
Okay, so this one might be a difficult question. We could change it if you don't know enough Harry Potter characters, but it's related to the work you're doing in your company. So the question is, and we can choose a different movie if you don't know many Harry Potter characters, but if you had to choose any character from the Harry Potter series to help you build your company, who would you choose and why?
Yeah, well, I don't know any other characters other than Harry Potter, but I think Harry Potter will be of great help if he can swing around with his magic stick, or how do you say, wand, and
the wand.
Do some admin. That would be great.
Yeah, the admin. Well, hey, there are some magical sounding tools out there on the AI front that I've been looking so much into AI, and I've been probably annoying the people that I've been talking with about it, because I just keep talking about it. I just cannot believe how incredible these tools are.
Yeah,
some of these
I saw
artificial intelligence tools.
I also use them also for the newsletter. I do believe it cannot replace an author of a newsletter, but you can use it as a tool. I would say, I'm not a native English speaking person. I'm Dutch, and helping me copyright has improved the quality of my newsletter tremendously. So I see that the AI tools that are out there. Also want to explore AI tools that help you chart. Like, I've seen those. So maybe that's coming up in coming newsletters. Let's see.
Yeah, no, it's an incredible tool. It saves so much time. Makes, especially as you mentioned, just makes copywriting a lot better. You can really get across your message in a better, more succinct way and provide more value. And at the end of the day, especially with something that you're doing, there's so much needed in terms of innovative ideas, different things that AI can't really begin to put together in the type of way that you're presenting it. But it gives you that tool to be able to put out great content that people can easily take in and enjoy.
Yeah. Or sometimes I ask to come up with a title, because I'm not a content creator. So coming up with flashy titles is also something.
I've loved your titles, by the way. You've had some really good ones.
It's mostly the last ones that I got some help from AI. But I know that titles increase the views, so I asked some help there.
Yeah. March comes in like a lion and goes out like a lamb.
Yeah, there's a Dutch saying, and that I looked up the translation for that. So.
To talk about your background.
Sure. So I have 2 master degrees, one in economic geography and the other in international development studies. And I worked at an NGO for many years. That's where I met my wife. And then I switched to work for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Netherlands. and there was a program manager developing programs in collaboration with the private sector, with companies from the Netherlands, in order to position them abroad. And my region was Latin America, so I traveled all over, mostly South America, Colombia, Peru, Bolivia, Brazil, Argentina. And what we did was identify certain opportunities in the markets in Latin America, together with the Dutch embassies, the economic departments of the embassies. So doing market research on these opportunities, they present this to companies in the Netherlands, see who's interested in grasping these opportunities, and form a consortia of companies. In many cases, they would cover various parts of a supply chain, and then position them as under the umbrella of the Netherlands in the different markets. So we would organize trade missions, participate in trade shows, and then have the pavilion of the Netherlands, organize incoming missions, and matchmaking activities. So that's also how I connected first with the mining industry. I started doing market research and look into the opportunities within the market, and then I noticed that it's a young industry that is fast growing, and because it's a young industry, there's so many things to develop still to professionalize the industry, that there's a lot of opportunities for many people to benefit from it, and at the same time contribute to the network of Bitcoin. So that's in short my background, and how I translated it into the Bitcoin mining industry.
Yeah. Well, glad you decided to come into the industry. It seems like you've traveled to a lot of places too. What was your favorite place that you traveled to before you got into mining?
Ooh, my favorite place. I'll have to say Argentina, right? It's like my second home, or now it's my first home even. So I enjoyed Argentina a lot. But in general, I like Latin America. I've always been appealed by the region because the people are so friendly and interested and so diverse. It's really amazing, and then the landscapes here are amazing. And what I really enjoy is the social part. So there's a lot of social meetups, and a lot of food when you come. So that I really
Yeah.
enjoy.
Yeah. I've been hearing a lot about, Latin America and just all these other places that to travel outside of the US from Kent. He went on have you met Kent before, by the
No, I
way,
haven't.
or
No.
spoken with him? He's a incredibly interesting human being, and he's been telling me about all these different places and all the incredible food, and it makes me feel like I need to get out of the U.S.
Yeah.
Sometime in the near future, especially with all the craziness happening.
Yeah.
But anyway,
And
thanks
and
for.
I lived in Amsterdam for many years, like
Oh,
more than
really?
16 years, and I do miss Amsterdam. Like I was there the other week. Like I traveled back to the Netherlands, and I think everybody should visit Amsterdam as well, because it's like it's a big city, but at the same time it's a village. You can get around very easily by bike. It's a beautiful city, and also for people from the States or other country or other continents, like it's a good start of your Europe trip, because from Amsterdam you're in Paris in 3 or 4 hours. Berlin is near, London is near. So if you ever decide to go to Europe, start at Amsterdam and
That's
explore from
actually one
there.
of my big regrets from I did a Euro trip a while back. That it was 9 years ago at this point. But on the Euro trip, I checked out some of those places that you mentioned. It was Berlin, Paris, Munich. I checked out Interlaken, Switzerland, Mallorca, Budapest, number of others. I don't have
Yeah.
to name them all, but I almost had Amsterdam on the list. And then just with the scheduling and everything, I wasn't able to swing it. And every single time I hear about Amsterdam, I just think dang, I got to get back there
Yeah. Well, now there's
into Europe,
a
and then
Bitcoin
loop that into
conference
the
in
trip.
Amsterdam, so you have a reason to go.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm going to have to make a trip at some point out there. Very cool, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been an incredible discussion. We're going to have to get you back on as you notice more things within the cycle. You're always welcome. I love the analysis.
Yeah, that would be great. I enjoyed the chat as well.
Yeah, I learned a lot, and I know that a lot of the listeners, especially the people who are currently working in the mining industry, got at least 3 very strong takeaways from listening to this episode.
That's good to know.
So that was it for today's video. On this channel, we upload content around Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. So if that's of interest to you, subscribe. And if you want to hear about the misleading claims exposed on the New York Times, click on this video right here. That's it for me today. I'll see you next time.